Hi friends, strangers, internet. My name is EmilyHanhan. I love colorful makeup and colorful language. It's time, y'all. It's time for me to do a video that has been on my mind for literally almost 3 months. That is how I traveled across the country with all my makeup. If you are new around here, first of all, hello, welcome. My name is EmilyHanhan. If you like colorful makeup, bitches with lots of opinions, or cute fat babes in general, I hope you'll subscribe. And if you're not new around here, you might know that at the end of May, I moved from New York down to Mexico for some time away. Not a vacation, just some time away. So for me, in the process of moving, first of all, I went through a lot of my stuff. I did put some in storage, but when it came to makeup, I wanted to bring them with me. Because I didn't want it to feel like a vacation, basically. Beyond all of the mental stuff of moving, that was a big undertaking. And I was pretty successful, I would say, in the process in terms of once I got here, unpacking everything and all of that. And I picked up a bunch of techniques that I will be using in the future. So I thought I would share it with y'all. So in terms of this video, it might be a bit of a juicy one. So take a look at the time bar to see if there are little chapter markers that will help you if you're just curious about specific parts of this process. I will be talking about the tools that I used. I will be going through each kind of like makeup or skincare type and telling you how I handled each one. And then there will be a Q&A at the end. I reached out to my patrons, my channel members, and I think I put it on Instagram as well to see if anybody had specific questions. So if there's anything that I don't answer during the process, I will answer them at the end of the video. Now, let's start with tools. So the things that I ended up using that were most impactful for me were brush guards, any and all makeup or travel bags, anything that you've collected over time, anything like this, all of them. Along with, these are cotton cloths that I will link in the description box if you are interested in. I had gotten a huge pack of them. You can use them to take off your makeup. I found that if you don't have foam, any of the foam kind of inserts that came in palettes, this was a great option. Bubble wrap, super, super, super important, bubble wrap. Plastic bags and plastic wrap. When it comes to plastic wrap, look into the Costco's of the world, even your Asian markets. Look for plastic wrap that has a slider and a cutter. And a lot of times you'll see it in wholesale spaces, restaurants, caterers use it. I was able to find a big roll with a cutter in a half size. The reason why that's so important is that it will sit on the ground on its own. You can pull the plastic wrap out and really wrap things without maneuvering with a box like this, rolls like this. That was a lifesaver because truly plastic wrap was a lifesaver. Here's what I'm also going to say. If you are offended by excess plastic use, this might not be the video for you. This might not be the advice for you. I am team humans don't have the impact that corporations do. So I'm going to do what I have to do to make this work for me. I'm also reusing basically everything that I used. If it was a plastic bag, I've reused it. Bubble wrap, I'm saving for future moves. The only thing that I may or may not be able to reuse over time are these if they get too dirty, but I have saved them for future moves. Plastic wrap was the main thing that got thrown in the trash. Two other things I don't have in front of me to mention. Scotch tape. important, very important. And any of those bubble padding, air pocket things that you get if you get things online. So if you know you're going to be moving or traveling with a large amount of makeup and you can hold on to those, I recommend that. Also to note, I put my makeup in checked luggage, except for one category. Everything went into checked luggage except for my single eyeshadows, and we'll get to those. Now, going into kind of like product by product, in terms of tools, brushes, sponges, as I said, brush guards are key. You can get a huge pack of these for really affordable. The only thing that I have found with the pack that I purchased is that the guards are a little bit too big for most of my eye brushes, but I basically was able to take one of my travel bags and fit all of my brushes in there, and anything that I could guard, I did. And the nice thing about that is that even if they're stacked up, even if they're sitting in the bag for, let's say you pre-pack for a week or something, when you take the guard off, you still have a great shape. It'll fluff out as you use it. I use the guards for more affordable, synthetic brush hairs and more expensive natural brush hairs. And if you're worried about your smaller brushes, you could either attempt to put a couple of small brushes into one cover, or you could pick up like a pencil case or something like that and put them all in there. But my small brushes that are synthetic, I really didn't worry about. And any of the natural hair brushes that were bigger, floofier, I was able to put them in guards. That was great because I literally just had one kind of like hefty, wide bag that was just full of brushes. And I don't feel like I had damage during that process. If you're a sponge person and you don't have packaging for what they came in, I do actually recommend these little travel containers. This one is from Shop Miss A or AOA Studio. It has a sponge in there. These are great if your sponges are damp because they do have little ventilation holes. But even if you don't want to just put them in a plastic bag or whatever, these are not bad, and they're squishy, so they can be kind of put into random places in your luggage without too much damage of the sponge inside. I'm not a huge sponge person, so this was less of a concern. I brought, I think, 2 or 3 maybe, and I think they were all new, so that's something to consider. So when it came to skincare, my biggest concern were big bottles with a lot of empty space, or anything that had a pump and I no longer had the lid cover for it. I'm terrible at keeping up with packaging. I don't keep boxes. I don't keep all that stuff. If a lid falls off, I sweep it up, it goes in the trash. I don't have a lot of care for that. Just being honest. I picked up a bunch of travel bottles. So I, will label the top. There's other nicer ways to label like the interior of the bottle, but I couldn't be bothered. I got them on Amazon. I got these on, again, Shop Miss A, AOA Studio, and I think I picked up some at Target or something like that. So I got them all over. And I would say if you want to use travel bottles, pick them up as far ahead of time as you can and pre-fill them and see if they hold the liquid. If they leak, throw them in a bag, see if the bag is wet inside. I found some of my, it was Cinema Secrets. Whatever that magical brush cleaner is made of, which is very strong chemicals, it did not, the bottles were like, we refuse to hold this. So that stayed not with me, but everything else, like I put a glycolic acid in here. This one I think had my snail mucin from CosRx. I put shampoo, conditioner, all of that in these. And the squeeziness is a little bit, like I was a little worried about how well they would hold. But outside of the Cinema Secrets, everything else that I've used these for, I haven't had issues with leaking or anything like that. I also used them for Bioderma. Yeah, anything that was in a big bottle, especially if it had a lid that wasn't something I could secure. So there wasn't really much to call out about skincare besides these. Anything else that was a regular container, I was just plastic wrapping and putting them in plastic bags. So when it comes to foundations, base products, I found that it's more about the kind of packaging and less about the product. So if you have a bottle that has a pump and has a lid, regarding bottles like this, I would grab plastic wrap and put it over the pump as best I could, like that, maybe a little bit longer of a piece, and then you put your lid on top of it, and so it really holds it in there. And then this bottle would go into a plastic bag, and typically I was putting a couple of bottles in each plastic bag. So if I already had a secure covering like this, I could put a couple of bottles in the bag. If you don't have a lid and it has a pump, this is when I would plastic wrap the whole bottle and then put it in a bag on its own. Because if it leaks out, at least you're just cleaning the one bottle rather than everything else you put in that bag. So again, if you have something like a pump and you're not able to control, like it doesn't screw back to not pumping down, then I highly recommend plastic wrapping the whole thing and then putting it in its own plastic bag. For squeezy pumps, squeezy tubes, I do a similar thing to the pump. Now, this one is very liquidy, so it just spewed out at me. But you'll just, cover the pump up. And then most lids will let you screw it back on top. And then I might plastic wrap the whole thing again, or I might not. For something like this was a very liquidy skin tint, I might have done that. And then if it's fully plastic wrapped, then again, it can go into a bag with other products. Or if I didn't want to fully plastic wrap it, I might have then put it in its own unique bag. But I tended to lean on plastic wrapping things versus not. And then you have smaller squeezy tubes. And that is where I would tape the lid. I would tape the where the lid and the packaging matched up. Now, anytime you tape, don't be like me and just keep the tape on there forever. When you get to your location, I do recommend untaping everything you can. When I did that, those products didn't have tape residue. The tape came off really easily. But as I've let things sit for longer, I do have some products where I didn't take the tape off soon enough, and this is probably going to be one of them as well, where I just sliced where the lid and the bottle meet and then unscrewed it. But if you take the tape off once you've traveled with it, I didn't have any issue with residue or anything, and that will stop leaking. And then I'm pretty sure, yet again, I put it in a plastic bag with a bunch of other products similar. Like I had a bunch of these cheek kiss, so I probably had a bag full of just the cheek tints, but again, taped up. And then I did the tape thing for really anything else that had a doe foot. So whether it's a concealer or if it was a primer, anything that was on the liquidy side, it would just get taped up and then it would be put either in plastic bags, or I might have put it in something like a waterproof travel bag. But I tended to fill up the plastic bags and then fill bigger bags with the plastic bags. So that's what I did for all the doe foots. They're the tape, the Scotch tape technique. And you can see with these two, they came off fine. There was no residue or issues. I think this one actually, I didn't even do that because it was brand new in box. Oh, I also did the tape thing with all of my lip gloss. So really anything that was liquidy enough to ooze out, I taped around the barrier. And I usually would just do like one circle of tape. You don't have to do a bunch of circles, but you could do like 1.5 if you wanted to make sure the seal is sealed. So if I had cream blushes or highlighters that were not in this kind of squeezy tube where I would just tape them shut, if I had, you know, a palette, a compact, this palette in particular, this is all of my Salt New York cream products. So again, I just plastic wrapped the hell out of this. I wasn't worried about breakage, so I didn't worry about the gap, like the space between the product and the top of the palette. Same with this. I may have just put this in a bag or just wrapped it up. This is my e.l.f. Cream Cheek palette. So that's another thing to consider. I think any of my other cream compacts, like my Ritual Defeat, Can Make, where I could put multiple, I just put multiple in a Ziploc bag. Now, something that might be controversial, but it worked for me. Every single powder, blush, highlighter that I had, I literally just filled the bag. I filled it until I could just zip it closed. So like right now, this bag is not full. And if you can hear it shaking around, that shaking is not good. But let's say this was more compacts. If I just kept filling it up to a point where it's just barely, you know, you don't want to bust the zipper like how I'm about to do right now. But basically, it was about kind of playing Tetris to the point that you can close it. But then, okay, so I still have a little space over here, so I might be a little worried. But like this part of the bag, nothing is moving. It's all super snug in the bag. And I had a bunch of blushes and highlighters. I even traveled with 2 blushes that had been repanned in a different pan, and I traveled with a blush that had already like cracked and broken, and I just put it back in the pan. Those did not devolve further. Nothing happened. I had one highlighter that was already cracked, break more, but none of my other compacts got damaged whatsoever from, you know, from highlighters and this kind of packaging to, you know, a powder blush, like none of them, like almost none of them. I would say I had like a 1% fail rate. So that is my thing with the bags. Use the bags, but fill them up. If you're putting something in it, like, and I would say this is true for my foundations, my concealers, everything, because I was worried about traveling with glass bottles. But again, because they were so snug in bags, I didn't have any issues with breakage. Like I didn't have any packaging breaking. So that is my big thing with blushes and highlighters. And if you're a bronzer person, I didn't do anything special to the packaging. I just filled up the bags to the brim. If you have bags that are a little thicker and more cushy like this one is, you might want to, you know, use these more than like a water resistant bag like this that's much thinner. But I'm pretty sure this bag was full of foundations and skincare. So that is my thing, is like fill it up without room to move. And then when it came to other things like all of the primers, eye pencils, mascaras, brow products, I wasn't super worried about them. And the brow products, I think I also may have taped my brow gels because I mainly use brow gels, but I didn't feel like that was actually necessary. If you are a liquid eyeliner person, I have heard other people say that when they travel with liquid liner, when they flew with it, that when they got to the location, that liner was no longer functioning for them. I only have like two liquid liners, and they're both the Drench Deep Space black eyeliner. One is brand new, one is open. The open one still works fine. Now I did give it a good couple of days not touching it before I tried to use it, but I didn't have any ink explosions or anything like that. Your mileage may vary. And with those, with my eye pencils, if you have lip liners, I just shove them in a bag, you know. There's not anything special about these in particular. I think that's everything besides the juicy eyeshadow palettes and single eyeshadows. So I'm gonna give you another random thing. For wigs, any kind of oversized bags you have, I am not a wig expert. I beat everything up that I own, including my wigs. So some people that own wigs might be screaming seeing this. It worked for me. Yes, this is from the brand that, you know, shall not be named, but it just happened to work out that I had these oversized bags and I was able to put, I came with like 6 wigs and I was able to put each wig in a bag. Bonus, these are great cushion in your suitcase. So eyeshadow palettes, let's talk about those. So the thing that I was worried, there was a couple of things I was worried about eyeshadow palettes. Same with single eyeshadows, but a little different. Generally speaking, I was worried about any kind of space from the lid to the shadow for any kind of movement, because even if for some reason a shadow broke or got jostled around, it's way better if the shadow will stay in its little space, stay in its home, versus spreading out all over the palette. This is where the cloth fabrics, the cotton disposable fabrics, were like clutch. So I would just put a piece in there, and if the palette was smaller than this, then you can cut these or fold them. If it was bigger, I would piece together a couple of them and then close them up, and you feel a little bit of pressure, but it's not keeping the palette totally open. And then I plastic wrapped the palettes closed so that the lid wouldn't bounce open, you wouldn't lose your thing. And then once they were closed, then, you can always wrap them up, but I really recommend plastic wrap, at least a circle of it. I probably covered everything pretty well covered, because again, if there was any breakage, then at least the powder would stay in this palette, versus if it has room to escape, then you have eyeshadow all over your clothes and everything. So that's basically what I did, and then I would just use any bubble wrap that I had. I might have bubble wrapped them and then plastic wrapped them. Now that I'm saying that might have been something that I did, is just give them a nice little bubble wrap, a little bubble wrap jacket in some capacity, and then plastic wrap them. See, this is my fault for not filming this for a good 3 months now. So that might have been actually what I did, now that I'm saying that out loud. I have bubble wrap in my head for the single eyeshadows, but this was also a thing. So yes, okay, let's say that. Do the cotton, or like I said, if you have the foam inserts that came with your palettes, or you could probably also use paper towels. I found these were cushy enough, and then again, I could always reuse them for, my skincare or something else once I got here. And they were also something that I don't use as much anymore, and I already had the product. I had them, and then I found magic erasers and all of those things, and I stopped really using them regularly. So it was also a good use of something I already had. So yes, I'm pretty sure now that I'm talking about it that I had the cotton in here, and then I had the bubble wrap little jacket, and then I plastic wrapped that. Some combination of that. I just do recommend, so here's the thing, is that as I was packing, I was not intensely going through and dividing clothes and makeup. So my concern was, let me protect each makeup item, so if it breaks or explodes or anything like that, it will stay in its little protective shell and not get all over anything else that's in the suitcase. And it worked for me. And even for a more complex packaging like the Kaleidos, I'm pretty sure I might have still just done this. Or if I trim this, then it would close easier. The magnet would be able to close. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I put stuff in all of them so that every single palette, from a little quad to, you know, an 18 pan, would be protected. So yeah, that's basically what I did for each of my eyeshadow palettes. And I have quite a few. Okay, y'all. Now it's time. Let's talk about single eyeshadows. I am a single eyeshadow slut. They're truly one of my favorite pieces of makeup ever. I prefer my indie single eyeshadows over most palettes. I have a lot of shadows. I was scared traveling with them all. I was really scared. I only lost 3 to 4 of my matte eyeshadows during this whole process. And I traveled with over 350 single eyeshadows. Yeah, so how did I do it? First of all, I downsized all of my palettes. So back in Brooklyn, I have, and I put these in storage, I have the big Colored Rain single eyeshadow palettes. They were from the Power collection. I believe they hold 88. They might hold 96, but I feel like they hold 88. They're lovely palettes. They're gorgeous. They have a big mirror that's actually more handy than you would think it would be. But other people mentioned that it might be better to downsize and use your smaller palettes. So the largest empty palette that I traveled with is this Adept 63 pan croc palette. I love this palette. It's so high quality. It's so lovely. I really didn't want to not travel with this. I really love the feel of this palette. So when I traveled, I actually was able to fit all of my matte eyeshadows into this palette. It's not what's in here today. Today it's all shimmers. But at the time, I put all of the matte shadows in there. If I were to do it again, and I am doing it again, I would not put all of my mattes in a big palette, because this was the palette that had 3 or 4 casualties in there. In the grand scheme of things, I am not mad about it though, because 3 or 4 matte eyeshadows is so not bad. Also, I tend to repan a lot of shadows, so I'm pretty sure the ones that I lost were shadows that I had repanned. And why that matters is that those are usually pressed softer than a mass manufactured palette or a lot of the indie matte shadows that are out there. So this was the largest palette size that I traveled with. I used everything from my 12 pan lethal palettes, both the ones with separate spots for each shadow and the ones without those separate spots. I used one Juvia's Place palette that holds about 48 shadows. I had 28 pan Ulta Z palettes, and then I also had the Tarte leopard print ones that are heftier palettes, like by weight, but I also adore them. Yes, I got all of my Cliona shadows here without casualties. So how did I do that? So this is again where bubble wrap and plastic wrap are clutch. But but this technique that I'm telling you, if you are somebody that is very, very focused on how pristine your shadows look, do not listen to this advice. I am focused on playing with my makeup, enjoying it, and being able to take it places without damage if possible. Now, if you look at my Cliona shadows right now, you might be able to see the level of texture that is happening on these pans. Now, I love these shadows and I use them a lot, but I will also say that there is more texture on them and on all of my shadows because of this technique. On the left are my Cliona shadows before I moved, and on the right are the Cliona shadows after the move and some usage. And what my technique is, if you can see how colorful this bubble wrap is. So for every single palette of single eyeshadows that I had, I took this small bubble wrap and I would put it down on the open palette. I usually put it bubble side down so that it had the most, it felt like that was the most protected. And I would close the palette. If I didn't want to trim it down, then I would wrap the excess around, which I think I did for most situations. And then I plastic wrapped the whole palette. Yes, it was a lot of bubble wrap on a lot of plastic wrap. Here's my thinking. So what I find, and I think with these palettes, I might have even doubled them. I think I did. Okay, so some palettes are going to be deeper than others. And by depth, I literally mean the space that you have between the magnetic base and the lid. I have found from just traveling with makeup on my own, having it around in my apartment, whatever, that is the space that causes the damage. Because as you're traveling, your shadows, if it's moving, if it's shaking, that is room for the shadows to jump and dance. So I both found it super important to fill that space, but also to make sure it stayed closed. So even if it wasn't perfectly closed, even if there was almost not so much bubble wrap, but almost a little too much, I was okay with that because I plastic wrapped everything. So yes, as you're stacking it, it might not be like, perfectly flat, but it kept the space filled up. So I did that with every palette. Even, like I said, I have some from Lethal Cosmetics where they had the wells in there for each shadow. I still did the same technique. And the other thing that I did, once I had all of my single shadows resorted into smaller palettes, had them all cushioned up, all plastic wrapped, my single shadows were what I took on my carry-on. I filled my backpack with single eyeshadows. My backpack had my singles, my laptop, my camera, and my wallet. Or no, I had a purse. Anyway, it was really heavy. It was really heavy. It was definitely a strenuous travel. It's not for the faint of heart. I don't have regrets because I'm happy that I made that choice, and I felt like it was the best option for the makeup product that was the most important to me. And I think the other reason why I might have had a couple of casualties in my matte eyeshadow palette is not only because of the scale of this, but also because it is the largest palette I had. This one and my Juvia's Place palette had to go vertically. I put it, I think, in the cushion spot with my laptop. So yeah. And also because this is the kind of makeup lover that I am, I brought some of my basic tools for repressing, repanning eyeshadows with me. So I knew that if I had any damages that I could take care of them. So that's another part of my packing list. I almost forgot. Let me grab the container that I'm using for lipsticks and just show you how I did those. So I was lucky enough to get PR from CASHAPP for the last year and a half or so. And I had the PR box from the CASHAPP Club Nebula release. Now I had kept it and I was holding most of my Kaleidos palettes in here. And then when I was packing up, I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna bring this. I don't know. Like, you know, seems like a lot to just pack. And then I started realizing it's like the perfect height for lipsticks. So I filled this up. Anything that was too tall, because I felt like it was very important for it to actually close, because it does have a bit of a magnetic closure. So anything that was too tall, I had a space over here where they were like laying flat, and then anything that didn't fit went into plastic bags, that kind of thing. But with this, once it was full, I just plastic wrapped the whole entire container. None of the lipsticks inside had been taped up. I just fucking wrapped this thing up like catering magic. If you have never worked in the food industry, plastic wrap is your best friend, and that's why it's my best friend in this situation. So that is what I did for these. I just had this big beast of a box. Let's get into how I kind of packed my bags. So once I had everything packaged up, so I got a very big rolling suitcase, and basically, I have a lot of clothes. I don't feel like I brought a ton of clothes, but as a fat person, your clothes are always bigger. Anyone that's like, oh my God, I went away for a week in a little carry-on rolling suitcase. I'm like, yeah, that's because you're thin. Generally. So, it was a stressful process because I was definitely willing to not bring everything. I was willing to put some stuff in storage. I was willing to give things away, but it was still stressful. What I did is, as I was packing, so first of all, Audra, dear Audra, gave me a great tip. If you can do this, one of the perks of those air bubble mailers is that you can put down a layer of clothes and then a layer of bubble mailer, and then the makeup on top, and then basically more bubble mailer, more clothes, and just continued that way. I did that kind of, but I also, because I knew I had these big boxes, I had bags that were, really full. I didn't really have a lot of like linear things. So once this was all plastic wrapped up, and I knew that like it wasn't really breakable, none of the lipsticks inside were really gonna break. If something happened and the box got damaged during the process, I would live. So this went at the very base of my rolling suitcase. And I think I also put like 2 or 3 bags down there that were some of the sturdiest stuff. Also, packing is a little frantic, so I probably could have put a lot of stuff in concerning positions, but I also was kind of like, I just need to get this done. So the more heavy duty stuff went at the bottom of the bag, whether it was makeup, maybe it was shoes, maybe it was, I don't know, who knows. Maybe I even put brushes down there because the bag that the brushes were in was pretty sturdy. And then I just kind of like layered, like the bag was laying flat, but I thought about gravity in terms of how it's being, traveled or whatever, thinking of the bag upright. And then with palettes, if I'm being completely honest, those were actually things that were kind of like filling in the gaps. So I had each palette bubble wrapped, and then if I saw space where there was like clothes and an air pad and stuff like that, sometimes I would just grab more bubble wrap around the palette or a couple of palettes and like shove it in that spot. Again, I'm not saying that this is a smart way to travel, but it worked for me. I was able to travel with one big suitcase and then one, technically it's on the larger size of carry-on size, but like mine was over full. I wasn't going to carry it on. But yeah, so I filled all of my makeup, all of my clothes, all of my skincare, toiletries. I brought some books. I brought some art. I brought things that I felt like would create the biggest impact for my days. So I was able to do that. I think in the smaller suitcase, I probably put a lot of the makeup in there, a lot of the bags of stuff, because there was a moment where I thought I might carry it on, and then I was like, no, that's not happening. But basically, because everything was like in a travel bag, or if it was a palette or something, it was all bubble wrapped up, I could kind of maneuver things in where there was space, and make sure there was some cushion, at least on some sides of the bags. Now I want to go into tips and questions. Let me call out a couple of big things that I discovered during the process. As I said, my carry-on was all of my single eyeshadows. If you are carrying on single eyeshadows, products in magnetic palettes, take your palettes out of your bag and put it in a bin just like you do with your electronics. Because what happened to me, besides the fact that I got groped in the middle of JFK, if you have heard Teresa's story time on her experience with that, I basically had the exact same experience, the exact same reason a couple of months prior to her. Same airport. Just saying. But while that was happening, the TSA was like, whose bag is this? Whose bag is this? I'm getting literally groped. I couldn't stop and interrupt that check. So anyway, by the time I got over there, I think they were already kind of side-eyeing me. When you have a stack of palettes in a bag that have magnets all across the base of them, it doesn't look great. So they had to take all of the palettes out, rescan everything, and I think she might have opened one of the palettes just to make sure. I feel like she might have done it with one of the palettes, which was fine. I was like, whatever, you know, I wanted them all plastic wrap, but I also am not going to fight with the TSA. So if you're taking products with magnetic bases, things like that, I would consider taking them out of your bag. I don't know why I didn't think about that, but I didn't. But the other part of it is that if you have to go through customs and you have that quantity of makeup, just be prepared to answer questions. When I got into customs, I did have the customs agent open up things, open up my plastic wrapped eyeshadows in particular, and basically be able to prove that I use these. These are not brand new. I'm not bringing them into another country to sell them. So the customs check took a little bit of time. They looked through both of the big suitcases and the carry-on, but I just said I really like makeup. I've used all of this. Feel free to look at any of it. And they did. They poked around, they looked at some stuff, and then helped me get it closed back up and back on my way. So just come early, you know, for the TSA check, and just be as patient as you can if you're dealing with customs. I'm not going to say that my experience is universal, but I just found that being patient and communicating as best I could was helpful. Let's go through the Q&As. So Millie, back to the brow, asked a couple of questions. What did you bring on in the carry-on with you? As I said, very specifically, I brought I also saw something else I remembered. So I brought all of my single eyeshadow palettes. I brought my laptop, the charger, my camera. I think I had the batteries in there. Maybe not. I might have just had the camera and then my mic. And like headphones, I think. I tried to fit all of my electronics and my eyeshadows in there. And then Millie also asked, did you do a declutter before the move? I decluttered hard before my move. I've gotten really into makeup over the last 3 to 5 years. And there would be things here and there that I would declutter, give away, throw away, return, whatever. But I hadn't really done any kind of proper sorting through my makeup ever. I did a really big declutter before the move. And we actually talked about it in a live stream. I'll try to remember to link it. But I found that once I have done that one time, I have just been consistently decluttering since then. And this is not me losing my love of makeup. This is not me doing anything like that. It's what I realized. The reason why I'm still decluttering is that, so for a lot of us, I would say, 2020 and 2021 have been a bit of an amorphous blur. But since I have moved, I'm like, oh, it's been 3 months and I haven't used this thing or that thing or that thing or that thing. Why? And then I'm looking at my collection. I'm like, oh, because I have a similar color in a formula I like more, or whatever it is. So I did a big declutter before I moved. I thought really long and hard because I didn't want to put things in storage. I didn't want to just let makeup kind of like sit while I was away, because my time away is more of like a big move in a lot of ways. Like, what I mean by that is that now that I've been away, it confirmed what I had felt, which is that I probably won't move back to New York in the near future. So I knew putting stuff in storage, I needed to focus on things that I would actually like kind of just like come back and consider taking with me, but I didn't want it to be anything that was perishable, basically. And then C. on Instagram asked, did you check it or was it carrying on? So again, I would say like 75% of my makeup was checked. Everything except for single eyeshadows. Skincare, foundation, concealer, highlighters, blushes, cream products, mascara, eyeliner, eyeshadow palettes was all in my checked luggage. Okay, so I'm looking at my YouTube questions, and one of the questions was, did any cream products melt, or is that a myth? I don't know if it's a myth or not. I didn't have any issues with melting, but I also feel like probably your best bet is that once you get to your new location, just let everything hang out for like 12 to 24 hours. Let your foundations and stuff hang out, because I found that as I was unwrapping them, I don't think I let mine like chill for long. I think it was maybe around 8 hours. I ended up doing it that night. I unwrapped all my foundations, and I found that like some of the more liquidy ones, speaking of the CoverGirl one that I showed earlier, it tended to want to splooge out. Which was fine because I was doing it over a sink and it wasn't a huge amount of product. But I would say let the stuff kind of like hang out. But no, I didn't have any issues. Salt New York, Ritual Defeat, Can Make, Holika Holika, I'm trying to think of anything else in a compact. Danessa Myricks, none of those melted. Again, I don't know if it's a myth, but that wasn't my experience. And I came to a very hot location and it was, summer also in New York. Casualties, the other casualties I wanted to mention. So as I said, I had about 4 matte single eyeshadows. I had the highlighter from Lethal Cosmetics that is cracked. I could probably repress it. I haven't decided what I want to do. Something that I noticed, and I've noticed since then, is that the really soft, flaky formulas from Kaleidos, the Kaleidos Futurism, the turquoise in here, the pink in VR Neon, and I feel like there might have been another. Some of the ones in 6 and 7, the purple and the peach ones, they are having trouble staying together. They popped out, like you can see you might be able to see there's a little bit of a stain of the shadow on the mirror, because when I opened them up, it was that shadow in particular was like sitting on the mirror, and I found that over time it's still wanting to to move and shift. And I just recently moved Airbnbs. So I think during that process, re-jostling them has made them delicate again. So I hope long-term that won't be an issue, but I did notice not just this one, but VR Neon, and I believe both the Futurism 6 and 7, some of the flakier shadows really want to stay out of the pan. And they'll come out as like a whole little hockey puck of eyeshadow, but they'll stay out of the pan. So I don't consider it a complete fail, but I do consider it a more delicate product in my collection now. So those were the main like casualties. And then Maria asked, what are the basics? What are the add-ons? I would say that's with when you are really thinking about moving and going somewhere different long term, you really need to think about like how you feel about your makeup. And like I said, now that I've decluttered it to some degree, I might even do more of it because I'm going to be traveling again soon enough. And I'll repeat what I said before, having this change in my life has put this time marker in there for me. And I have a really hard time with like keeping a grasp of time with my brain, ADHD, depression, all the things that I deal with. For some reason, my relationship to time is it's a hard thing to keep track of. So knowing I moved this long ago and I still haven't played with this, or I played with it once and I didn't feel that strongly or whatever, it's not me just being like, fuck my makeup collection, get rid of it all, because I still love makeup and I love so much of the makeup that I own, but I'm understanding more how much I really want or need, whatever, like how much of it brings me some kind of joy versus how much of it I was just like, this is fine. And Jessica had a good question. Did you have a special box for your most loved and most coveted items, like a keepsake, but with makeup? I think that is why I packed my singles in my carry-on. And it's also why, like, I'm pretty sure at the very top of my bag was my palette with my Cliona shadows, because I knew that like I could kind of check on it easily. Like, yes, I had some of the smaller palettes packed on top, but like it was like smaller palettes, this palette, a couple other Tarte palettes, and like, you know, some other like it, but this was like kind of at the top. I was careful about it. I was worried about it. And so that was important to me. And then Jeffrey asked, they said, I'm moving in October and I have 2 boxes that I haven't opened for 2 months, don't know what's in them. How do I break the cycle of keeping junk because of sentimental value? I feel guilty throwing it away because I've held on to them for so long. This might be an unpopular opinion, but I think because you've held on to them for so long and they're just like in boxes, it's even better to just let it go. Because now, okay, you could definitely go through the boxes and see what's in there, but I'm kind of a proponent of just let it go. Here's the thing that I found with keeping things that are sentimental. If they are actually sentimental to me, they are out in my home. Because them being out in my home helps me spend time with those feelings and enjoy those feelings. But if it's sentiments that are just stuffed in a box, I'm not reading anything into your situation, but I know for me, those were sentiments I didn't want to experience anymore, but I just felt too guilty. I'm going to be really real right now. Moving broke me of a lot of it because I had a lot of shit in my apartment, and I know it's a mix of a lot of different things at play. But in some ways I had to move and force myself to get rid of a lot of things, to throw things away, because it didn't make any sense to take all of that with me. It just didn't. Even if I was moving within the New York City area, taking all of that with me is kind of like taking all of this bad energy with me. So that really helped me when I realized that like I cannot take all of this. This would be a terrible move and there's no reason to do that. If I was going to take all of that with me, I might as well just stay in the same place. And I knew I was, whether I wanted to or not, I had made like, whether I wanted to or not, that I had made a decision to move. And I couldn't just drag all of that with me. So I hope that was helpful. I also have found that a lot of makeup that I might have felt sentimental about, that I didn't realize I felt sentimental about, moving with it helped. Or other things that I might have moved with, but I'm talking makeup right now. There are things in my collection that I kept for a number of different reasons. And I thought most of the reasons were, I like this makeup and I want to use it and I want to play with it and it inspires me. But again, 3 months later, I'm still saying that same thing to myself, yet I haven't used it. It hasn't inspired me. So that, again, is that sign to say, you might feel more sentimental about this than you're giving yourself credit for. And that's okay. But also, if you really don't want to move stuff that you're not actually using, might be time to take another look at that pile of makeup you have over there. So yeah, I think that's everything. I've been talking for a while. I feel like I have covered everything I wanted to cover. But as I said, please, please, please don't be shy. Leave me any questions you have in the comments. If there's something that I didn't talk about, if there's enough, I might do another round of this. Probably not, but feel free to ask away and let me know your moving with makeup advice, your traveling with makeup advice. I feel like this was more of a big move makeup video rather than just a small trip travel video. But if any of that is helpful for you in any future travels you have, definitely give me a thumbs up. Share it out with your friends. Perhaps check me out on all my socials, Patreon, YouTube membership, Twitter, Instagram, all the stuff in the description box. And thank you for spending some of your day with me. And don't forget to take care of yourself better today than you did yesterday, because you are worth it. Bye, friends.